Let me start with the challenge posed by Russia's coercion and aggression. Despite the progress that we made together in the aftermath of the Cold War, Russia's actions in recent years, its violations of Ukrainian and Georgian territorial integrity, its unprofessional behavior in the air, in space, and in cyberspace, as well as its nuclear saber-rattling, all have demonstrated that Russia has clear ambition to erode the principled international order that has served the United States, our allies and partners, the international community, and in fact Russia itself so well. As it does so, Russia appears driven by a misguided ambition and misplaced fear. Russia wants to be considered, and very understandably, as the important world power it is, one of historic importance. Unfortunately, its tendency is to pursue that goal by undercutting the work and contributions of others, rather than by creating or making positive contributions on its own. Sows instability rather than cultivating stability, lashes out, alleging that it fears for its own viability and future, even though no nation, not the United States, not the United Kingdom, seeks to defeat it or constrain its potential. Just the opposite. We've all expressed an interest in being able to work more closely with Russia. And in response to this behavior, the United States is taking a strong and balanced approach to address Russia's actions and deter Russian aggression against our allies. We're strengthening our capabilities, our posture, our investments, our plans, and our allies and partners, all the while keeping the door open to working with Russia wherever and whenever our interests align. And let me be clear, the United States does not seek a cold, let alone a hot war with Russia. We don't seek an enemy in Russia. But also make no mistake, we will defend our allies, the principled international order, and the positive future it affords us. We will counter attempts to undermine our collective security and will not ignore attempts to interfere with our democratic processes. Now, we haven't had to prioritize deterrence on the transatlantic community's eastern flank for over 25 years. Unfortunately, now we do. That's why the United States is strengthening our deterrent posture here in Europe. Our defense budget for the coming year includes significantly more funding for our European Reassurance Initiative, $3.4 billion, more than quadruple what we allocated just last year. That will allow us to rotate an armored brigade combat team into Europe on a persistent basis and to preposition a brigade's worth of equipment and warfighting gear to be used by American troops flown into Europe. And that's in addition, of course, to the 2 brigades the United States already has stationed in Europe. And meanwhile, NATO, which the United States and the United Kingdom helped establish and build into the greatest alliance in history, has been writing a new playbook for itself. Here's what I mean by that. The 20th century NATO playbook that helped counter the Soviet Union in the Cold War is not a perfect match for today's Russia challenge. That's why NATO's new playbook takes the lessons of history and leverages our alliance strengths in new ways. We've been adapting and innovating to meet new challenges like countering the cyber and the hybrid warfare threats we're seeing more and more of, integrating our conventional and nuclear deterrents, and adjusting our military posture and presence here in Europe so we can be more agile and quick in responding to threats. For example, the United States, the UK, and our NATO allies have developed and exercised a very high readiness joint task force. It can deploy NATO forces on a 48 hours notice from multiple locations in Europe to any crisis on alliance territory. And this is a real innovation, one that combines the commitments from many members of the transatlantic alliance, the United States, the United Kingdom, and others, to respond to crises in Europe's east, in its south, or elsewhere. The UK's own Allied Rapid Reaction Corps will rotate in to spearhead this task force soon. NATO has also agreed to a persistent enhanced forward presence of 4 NATO battalions stationed in allied countries on its eastern flank, 1 each in Poland, Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania. This past July, at the NATO summit in Warsaw, the United Kingdom announced that it will lead the battalion in Estonia. And the United States announced that it will lead the battalion in Poland. Additionally, NATO and its members, including the US and UK, are also providing support to partner countries like Ukraine and Georgia, both of which have seen their sovereignty and territorial integrity violated by Russia. We're helping them strengthen their capabilities for national defense, to improve their ability to work with NATO, to reform their defense institutions, all important in the face of Russian coercion and aggression. Of course, even as we take these prudent steps to guard against a revisionist and more aggressive Russia, the United States will continue to hold out the possibility that Russia could one day assume the role of a constructive and reliable partner. In fact, we've cooperated with Russia when it's been in our shared national security interest to do so, even recently, most recently, in fact, in preventing Iran from acquiring a nuclear weapon. In these past few weeks, America's Secretary of State, John Kerry, has been tirelessly testing the proposition for a true ceasefire in Syria with his Russian counterpart. Russia entered the Syrian tragedy saying it wanted to counter terrorism and end the civil war, which is the source of so much suffering, through a political transition. But what it has done is very different from what it said. Unfortunately, so far, Russia, with its support for the Assad regime, has made the situation in Syria more dangerous, more prolonged, more violent. That has contributed to what President Obama this weekend called the gaps of trust that exist between our two countries. Nevertheless, our diplomatic team continues to test whether Russia will agree to take and then actually carry out the specific steps to attain a true ceasefire, and whether it is in fact willing and able to influence the Syrian regime towards a political transition that ends the civil war. Today's news out of Syria is not encouraging. The choice is Russia's to make, and the consequences will be its responsibility.